I want to go through and pay some time with our sponsors today. I will be also linking the website that we have up for sponsorships, as well as a very interesting TMDA business directory that if you have not already signed up and claimed your listing, please do that, of course. So let's talk about our sponsors. Thank you to BSI, CAI, Emergo, Med to Market, Procumer, Costa Rica Exports, Greenlight Guru, Dickinson Wright PLLC, Qualio, QA Consulting, MedScout, Galen Data, and Globio. Also a thanks to our in-kind sponsors, Maestro Logistics, ENT Vantage Diagnostics, Health Tech Insight, and Technology in Motion. At this time, I want to turn it back to Joe to introduce our special guest as well as our panelists. Thanks, Joe.
Again, my name is Joe Skraba. I'm president of the Texas Medical Device Alliance, and today we're here to talk about how companies have responded to, from a sales and marketing perspective, to their during the COVID time. So, but before we get to that, I'd like to introduce Andrew Crawford, who is the commercial director at Procumer. Procumer is our newest TMDA sponsor. So welcome, Andrew. And if you could tell us a little bit about Procumer and the medical device OEM opportunities in Costa Rica.
Absolutely, Joe, and thank you for having us on behalf of the government of Costa Rica and the Export Promotion Agency of Costa Rica. We truly appreciate this great possibility of being here. Just let me know when you guys are basically watching my screen, please. I'm just uploading at this moment.
I see your calendar.
Got it?
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is just a quick overview of basically what's happening with the medtech industry down in Costa Rica. And it's been a great story of success, if we could tell. Like I said, we represent the government of Costa Rica from the export, strategy. We work along with the Ministry of Foreign Trade, which is the equivalent of the Department of Commerce in the US. And CMDA, which is basically the climate investment agency that supports whoever is interested in decision-making process with Costa Rica. So they will go to CMDA first and then do their due diligence. This is where we are located right now around the world, but Russia, as we know, we don't have to get into much detail on that. And that's basically give us a great understanding of the supply chain and how the supply chains are working right now. And this is pretty much connected to our level of free trade agreements. We have 15 free trade agreements going on with the world right now. This is giving us about 75% access of the GDP, and 2.8 billion people basically get access to these free trade agreements through what we are doing. And this is pretty much connected to the ecosystem that the country has been created during the last 20 years. We do have a great footprint of multinationals doing business down there. They have settled down operations to basically take over of different initiatives around the world by settling down offices and corporate operations in Costa Rica. So here we have a footprint of companies in the aerospace, pharmaceutical, medical devices, life sciences, information technologies, and so many others that basically are doing business down there. And this creates a local ecosystem of companies, which in the case of the medical devices has been growing a lot. We have more than 150 companies totally focused on the industry. And we have 16 subsectors right now doing business down there. These subsectors basically require a number of different services and different technologies and different support from the government and some other parties. So we develop different programs basically to, let's say, enhance and scale up capabilities of local suppliers so they can basically become part of the ecosystem of the life sciences and medtech industry in Costa Rica and to the world. So this is a great, let's say, venue that we have created for these companies, and they're basically responding with a great level of a connection and interaction with our government. Things that we could do and we could keep going and moving forward with TMDA is that we can sponsor initiatives that you guys are running. We can even invite Costa Rican companies to become sponsors of TMDA and be actives and proactives with what you guys are doing. That's something that I can further discuss with you, Joe. We can assist you in terms of inquiries that you may have for supply chain. If you are having visits to Costa Rica, let's say in the makings, we can help you to complement those visits. If you like to build agendas going down to Costa Rica, whether in person or whether virtual, we can help you with that all year round to keep basically checking on possibilities for supply chain. We do have a couple of events going on in September, which is the contract manufacturing tour and the Buyers Trade Mission. Those venues right now are basically sold out because of the interest that people have in Costa Rica and how people is basically looking for traveling. People is crazy about traveling right now. So we are pretty much sold out. But anyways, we don't have more like free accommodation for international delegates that are interested in traveling to these events, but we can still create packages for that. Would include like meals and transfer from the airport to convention center to site tours, and basically include the delegates in a good number of social events as well. So that's something that we can also have as a possibility, not only considering that those who are basically able to find accommodation, we're not going to say no to those who are anyways interested in traveling. And we also have a virtual event going on in September, which is a way to complement the virtual, the in-person visits that we have in September. So this is going to be October 4-7. And we can also even plan for a TMDA trade mission to Costa Rica. That's something that I just want to put on the table for Joe and to further discuss as well. And we can also plan for the events on 2023, which will allow us also to assure accommodation as a part of the packages that we offer into this type of, let's say, projects and programs that we run every year. So that's pretty much from my side. That's my contact information. I think we might have still 5 minutes. If you want to run questions, it's fine. If not, we can do it by the very end. Thank you, guys.
Andrew, how many people are you expecting to have in the September visit?
Well, we already have combining events is like 350 international delegates from 51 countries right now.
Nice.
That's what we have.
Yeah. And I posted Andrew's contact information in the chat for everyone. So if there's any need for you and your company, reach out to Andrew directly. He's in Houston, so obviously very available to anyone here in Texas that needs him. I met him here in Austin a couple months ago, and looking at utilizing his network of contacts to potentially help my business out as well. So.
And something to keep in mind, Joe, just before you let me go, is these are totally free of charge services, which is very important. We don't charge a thing for this. This is just a government duty that we have from Costa Rica. So whoever is interested in building up more information, creating more understanding of what can be done from Costa Rica, that's our job. So we're just fully available for that.
Yeah. Very good. Anybody have any questions? We got a couple more minutes. I think I saw did I see someone's hand up? Carly?
Yes, hi. I just had a quick question. I used to work in cardiac rhythm management, and I just relocated to Austin. I'm looking for new opportunities, but for your organization, Andrew, might there be volunteer opportunities to help reach out with Costa Rica? That I love what you're about and offering free services to underprivileged populations, but was just wondering if there might be volunteer opportunities while I do have time on my side.
Yeah, that's something that we could further discuss for sure. We do have a association for like wellness, which is totally connected to all the ecosystem of, let's say, traveling to Costa Rica for the purpose of supporting the life sciences. And that goes from the, let's say, research side to the academia and to the even to the, let's say, entertainment and tourism as well. So there would be a different ways that I could help you to connect and understand what avenues you would have available. And for sure, we can try to build something from there. So we can catch up later on and have further discussions on that.
Okay, thank you. I will reach out.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments for Andrew before we move on?
Joe, I'm just gonna put down here my new cell phone number. Changed it yesterday, by the way. So let me just put it down here, by the way.
Okay.
I just read it. So you have the right one here. There you go.
Great. Well, thank you, Andrew.
Appreciate
Good
it,
luck
guys.
on your events and coming up here in September and October.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll transition now to the main part of our program, where we have three companies and people supporting them being interviewed around how they responded to the COVID situation from a sales and marketing standpoint. Two of these companies are in the service area, and when we have one medical device company itself that will be there. So first, I'd like to introduce you my friend Chris DuPont with Galen Data. And Chris, appreciate you being here. And remember, for anyone that has any questions, you use the chat box to send those questions in, and we'll get those addressed during the discussion.
Hey, Joe. Thank you for that warm introduction. Nice to meet everybody. My name is Chris DuPont, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Galen Data, and I'm heavily involved with the sales and marketing. Joe gave me a little bit of an agenda, so I'm just, Joe, with your permission, I'll just follow through that agenda that you gave me in the email.
Yeah, that'd be
right?
great.
And
Tell us a little bit more about Galen and yourself, and then allow you to go into that.
Sure. And please, I'll be looking at the chat, but anytime you have questions, feel free to ask. I have 3 boys, so I'm used to being interrupted all the time. It's part of my life. Galen, my background is I'm an electrical engineer, but I've done aerospace. NASA brought me down. IBM, NASA brought me down to Houston to work Space Station Freedom, and then I shifted into Class 3 medical devices. So the majority of my career is on the software side of Class 3 medical devices. Galen's mission, it's really simple. Back when I was working for a company called Cyberonics, we'd have issues out in the field, and I knew we could solve those through connectivity, but the technology just wasn't there 15 years ago. That's no longer true. We have connected technology. We all are now living and growing up in a connected world. And Galen's mission is to connect all the world's medical devices. Most medical devices today are not connected to the internet. We saw that and lived that, and we're seeing a fundamental paradigm shift in the market. What is Galen? Galen is a purpose-built cloud platform for medical devices. Medical devices could be Class 3 cardiac devices. They could be wearable tech, neurostimulators, pain stimulators. We have about every type of diagnostic and therapy device on our platform. This topic is really about the sales and marketing. And so I like to talk about, we started Galen about 1.5 years before what I call the blip. If you Marvel fans, the blip is where half the population disappears. And in my case, I was at the office Friday and I came in Monday and nobody was here. And it was challenging because we were still early stage. We started to go to conferences throughout the United States. All that turned off immediately. And so one thing, Joe, is you all experience this, is there is no human contact. And so how do you start a company without human contact? And so we weren't an established company, we're still getting started. And so the challenge was, being a software company, we did have some advantages. We're used to working online and virtual. So we shifted to 100% online presence. And the very first thing we did is we knew we had to establish inbound and outbound marketing channels. Just to give a little insight, because electrical engineer, I didn't know what inbound and outbound marketing channels were 5 or 6 years ago. And so inbound is when you go out and tactically look for an opportunity and you reach out and you make contact. LinkedIn, Sales Navigator are the tools we use. They're fantastic tools, and LinkedIn proper, what we call legacy, is free to use. So it's a very valuable tool. So the very first thing we did is we started forming relationships with companies that could help us. Podcasts. This is a webinar, but it's a form of visual and voice communication that once you create the content, it lives forever. So we started to try to do our own podcast, and then we partners with other companies to do podcasts. Just a big shout out to Greenlight Guru. We've done podcasts with them. They are a fantastic sales and marketing machine. We've learned a lot from Greenlight Guru. And then we do webinars. We first started doing webinars with Zoom tools, and they worked well, but then we quickly went to something called GoToMeeting webinars. It's more of a professional tool. We paid for it, but it works well for us. And now we're on a cadence of doing webinars basically the third week of every month. So that's part of our inbound. Part of your inbound challenge is to create content of value to people that might be interested in your platform. So we would do a webinar with a clinical, like Joe, you're in the clinic space, or a regulatory, design controls, ISO 13485, that's a quality management system for medical device companies. And so what we tried to do is do webinars of value. So if I was starting a medical device company for the first time and I would need to learn about 13485, which is a quality management system, or regulatory, or first contact with the FDA, that creates value. But the inbound takes time because you're creating a web of influence. The next thing we did was blogs. Now, we wrote our own blogs, engineers writing their own blogs, and that kind of worked, but they were kind of nerdy and techie. And so we did enlist some help. And, when you start up a company with 3 folks, you're doing everything from webinars, podcasts, blogs, trying to make sales. And so as you grow, you try to diversify or spread out some of those tasks. Company news. One of the best advertisements we do is once we landed a customer and they were successful, we engage them and ask them if we could do a press release, a use case. And we're 100% virtual. And so during the blip, this is the only way. And the other added complexity for me is I came into the office every day, and I was more actually isolated at the office than I was at home with my family. But there was a level of communication and bureaucracy now I had to deal with. And so it actually increased my workload by, I couldn't just go down the hall and talk to my CTO. I'd have to schedule a call. And that was pretty stressful because there was just a level of communication that I wasn't used to. And the other thing that we kind of discovered naturally on our own organically was we call the medical device partner ecosystem. And so what this means is, Galen's mission is to give back when we can. And often we've been doing this a while in the medical device space, and companies come to us and they would need, a CRO, which is a clinical research organization, or they would need Greenlight Guru. They need a quality management system, and we'd make introductions to Greenlight Guru, or firmware, or design controls. You need electrical test station, and so we had all these networks. So we used to just make email introductions. One of the things that we kind of stumbled across is that we now formalize that. We have our own channel partner network that we call the medical device partner page, and it's on our website. Is that now, if you are a service provider and can help companies that are non-competitive to us but are like-minded, we engage them. And when we find somebody that needs a quality management system, we immediately make an introduction to Greenlight Guru. If you need a regulatory expert, we make an introduction. And then all we ask for in kind is that when these companies stumble across a company needing cloud connectivity, they make an introduction to us. We don't ask for any cash or anything like that. It's simply, a professional agreement that when they need a service, we make an introduction. And the other thing we did that we learned is this is something called a lead magnet. Is you create a significant piece of literature that is of content. It's not a 2-page blog. It's a 25-page document that covers the whole aspect. If I'm a new medical device engineer and I want to connect my device, What do I have to do from a regulatory, clinical perspective, a design control, a software? What standards do I need to comply with? So we spent 3 or 4 months creating this document. It went through like 11 peer reviews. But what we do is we gate it, meaning that we put it out there on LinkedIn, we put ad spend around it, but for you to download this document, you have to give up your email. And so we do feel there's real content here of real value, because I'm the last person to give up my email, and probably most folks are like that. But if I'm trying to solve a pain point and I come across a document that's free and I only have to give up my email, what that does, that provides huge value, because that's a self-filtered lead to us. That's somebody that's looking for medical device connectivity. We provide something of value, and they provide something of value at us for their email. And so this was a big advantage, and we still use this today. So at this point, I'm gonna take a breath to see if there's any question. Joe, I think I hit all those topics.
Thank you. And again, anyone with questions, please chat them in. We'll get those addressed. So Chris, what lessons did you learn from the lockdown time that will stay a part of your sales and marketing plans? I think we saw some of them already, but what else is out there for you guys?
It's doing more of the same. We've never bought a list. That's never worked for us. Relationships, we work really hard about building deep relationships with companies. They take a risk on us, and we realize that. So we try to be as transparent and honest. We have recently started going to conferences again. We've even gone to some global conferences. But everything that we discovered during the pandemic worked for us. It's very cost effective. And so we're going to try to exploit, do more of it as we can.
Tell us a little bit about your sales traction that you've gotten during that COVID period.
Yeah, so we're fortunate. A lot of companies were going out of business. I mean, we took a hit. We missed our projections, to be quite honest, but we closed customers and our expenses went way down. As you know, going to conferences is very expensive, exhibiting at conferences. And so even though we missed our projections, our expenses went way down. And it's, as bad as and horrible as this disease or this COVID is that I think it's going to accelerate us, at least the opportunity of Galen is that, I know I personally stood in a car line for hours trying to get tested. And so, Galen was born before the pandemic. Most medical devices aren't connected. I think the pandemic proved that, there is huge value in connected medical devices. I mean, why do I have to stand in a car lane and wait? It took many days for me to get my results back. That's not the technology can solve that problem. So as horrible as that, the pandemic was, I think it's going to accelerate the need for connected medical devices and get your data real time. There is no equivalent of a check engine light for medical device. You drive a car, your check engine light goes on, you have low tire pressure, there's something wrong with your engine. Why don't we have that in medical device? And I think the pandemic proved that we certainly should have the equivalent of a check engine light for medical devices.
And from your customer's standpoint, how did that customer decision-making process change and get affected by COVID? Did your time go on and the lead times changed? Did that kind of aspect?
It did, because again, our value proposition, or when a company picks us, it's mostly built on trust. And do we have the expertise? Have we done this before? Are we really medical device folks? And when you're in person and you can shake somebody's hand or be in their physical presence, you can get a stronger sense of trust. How do you get that trust through a video call? It's hard, and there's some fakers out there, and it's easier to figure out the fakers when you're in person, but it's harder when you're on a video call. So we just had to have more calls, meet more of our team members, and tried to be, when we didn't know, we just said, we don't know. We don't have an answer for that. We may be able to go find the answer, but if we couldn't do it, we were just honest. And I think that goes a long ways, being honest and transparent as you can, even over video calls.
And a question from Andrew Crawford. Did you link the podcast webinars and press releases to a SEO strategy?
So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Everything we do is linked to an SEO strategy. The words we use in our blogs and our white paper are strategized with our SEO, the optimization. The podcast we push out in various ways through LinkedIn, through our network. Yeah, every asset, marketing asset we have, we try to synergize with our SEO strategy. That's a great question. Thanks for asking that.
What are the metrics you're using on these various tools that you've used on their success and their ability to draw you into potential customers?
So some metrics are very objective, some are subjective. Let's start with an objective measurement. So I won't give you the specifics, but we put X amount of spin behind LinkedIn on a daily basis. From that, because what we call the lead magnet, this document here, it's gated. We know how many people download it. We also focus on the United States. We also focus on regions outside of the United States. We also focus on certain individuals within a company. For example, if you're Medtronic, we'll never get to the CEO of Medtronic. But if you're a 20-person startup, we probably can get to the CEO or the CTO of the startup. So we take that into account. Sometimes our ad marketing is focused on 20-person companies. Sometimes it's focused on 2,000-person companies. So the idea is, because the lead magnet is gated and we know exactly how much we're spending, if we double that spend, you would think you would double the white paper download. Well, we did that experiment, and that's very objective, and we got a lot of international interest. The challenge, and so we doubled the spend, we got double the interest, but that interest is, even though we doubled the interest, that interest wasn't getting into our sales funnel. And so we learned from that, we adjusted. Podcasts are more of brand awareness, but one of the things we do on every sales call is, how did you hear about Galen? I heard about you on a podcast, and we're starting to get that more. And what's nice about a podcast, it's an asset that lives forever. And so, a podcast I did a year ago might give results today. And so that's very important. And again, Greenlight Guru, we did some podcasts with Greenlight Guru, and hey, I heard your podcast on software as a medical device, CMD. I loved what you have to say. Can we talk? And so we try at the beginning of each sales call, within 5 or 10 minutes, how did you hear about Galen? Was it through our white paper? Was it through podcasts? Was it through webinars? And then we track that and we take that back to our marketing team.
We got a question from Carly. How do you address cybersecurity and privacy HIPAA concerns that your customers might have about adopting RPM technology?
So they might not have, they absolutely have cybersecurity concerns and HIPAA concerns. So that is why Galen exists. If you guys are familiar with the different classifications of medical device, class 1, class 2, and class 3, Galen designs and operates as a class 3 medical device. That's license standing. That's like pacemaker companies. And we have class 3 medical devices on our platform. But it's easy to say, hard to do, right? And so we have some very large customers that it was contingent on proving that. But how do you prove it? So the very first thing we did within years of Galen's existence, we got our ISO 13485 certification, which is a globally recognized quality management system for medical device companies, and we're independently audited. The other thing about cybersecurity is there is no real single standard that the world recognizes in recent history. There's one that's coming up called High Trust. High Trust is all about cybersecurity and the protection of privacy data for patients. In June of this year, we spent almost 2 years pursuing that. We are now, the Galen's product is High Trust certified. And so we have these 2 certificates that are independently vetted by a third organization that says we meet at least the minimal criteria for quality management of a medical device and for cybersecurity. And we spent a lot of time going after those certificates. Great question.
So, so as you use your crystal ball now, as you're trying to chart the sales and marketing strategy and pathway for your company, what lessons have you learned from the past 2 years, and how are you going to apply those to the next year or two?
The lessons learned for COVID is they were successful for us. So we'll do more of that. It's very cost effective. Like I said, we are doing conferences, in-person meetings again, and then figure out how to scale this thing. The product is extremely scalable. We've proven that time and time again. It turns out that, I'm an electrical engineer, but it turned out not knowing how to do sales, it became somewhat natural for me because I'm very passionate about what we do. Galen's mission is to give back and help medical device companies get to a commercial market better, faster, and cheaper. And I think we've done that. Some of these medical device companies we're helping, the disease states have been personally experienced by the people of Galen. So we're not only commercially motivated, we are personally motivated to get these companies out there. One of the challenges is, where do we find that inflection point when a medical device company needs connectivity? So we're working on that. From a sales and marketing, one of the things we did, during COVID, we engaged a local university to help us build a scraping algorithm. We provided that scraping, that capstone group, some keywords. They go out and scrape FDA databases and find recently cleared 510K cleared companies, and then we go after those. So we want to exploit that more. We're only pointing at one database. We want to point at 3 or 4, but again, that just takes resources, time, and money.
Yeah, absolutely. That's goes for a lot of things in life. Well, any parting comments or thoughts? Tell me just a little bit about kind of your customer mix that you now have. Who's the furthest along in utilizing your products? Are they being utilized? Are those approved and in the market? Maybe you can touch a little bit on how you work with the client company around the approval process for their products.
Thank you for that. We're in 5 regions of the world. We opened up commercial operations in May in Europe. We're deployed to AWS, Amazon Web Services. So wherever AWS goes in the world, Galen will follow. We'll be expanding throughout the world more so. The value proposition of Galen, and we weren't a solution looking for a problem. People were paying us to build these custom clouds. It could cost up to $1 million in a year to develop these custom clouds. So the real value proposition is, if you've been through the FDA gauntlet, at PMA, we have class 3 medical device companies on our platform. We have little itty bitty companies on our platform. We love startups, and we have everything in between. We have therapy and diagnostic companies on our platform. The real value of Galen is, you might be an expert in neuromodulation to help alleviate pain, and you have this great novel device, and you needed to bring it to market, but compliance is an issue, and the only way you can get compliance is through connectivity. Do you take 50% of your financial resources and your engineering resources and go develop your own cloud at risk? Or would you rather spend all those resources on your core indications of use? I think you'd rather spend all those core capability on your indication of use. Do what you're good at. Let Galen offset the risk and the need and the burden of creating the IT infrastructure, because we are purpose-built, hyper-focused on the medical device industry, and that's what we do. We can help you and alleviate a lot of the cost and risk at a global level.
Mm-hmm. And is there a leading company that's out there that's that we would know about that's utilizing your services in a product release now?
Absolutely. There's lots of companies that you guys know about and see in the news. I just can't talk about them.
Okay.
And there's other companies we can talk about. We have some use cases. One of the companies I can talk about, and this is so cool tech, is that out of New Zealand, what an EEG is, for my background is epilepsy, and there's essentially an EEG for the stomach out of New Zealand called Elementary. Incredible technology. They just got their clearance with the Galen Cloud in the United States. That is a company I can talk about because we've done a use case with them. I have permission to talk about them, but there's all this new novel technology that's coming to market that didn't exist 4 or 5 years ago.
Great. And how many companies have gone through the regulatory process with your with the Galen technology?
I can't speak to specifics, but I can speak to types. So PMAs, pre-market approval,
Yep.
IDEs, which is the industrial device exemption. We're through that. 510Ks. We have had a number of companies that are, and will be going through some form of regulatory process. De novo, we've been involved with that too. So, and we're growing. So we are definitely a tool in your, we are a component in your system when it comes to getting clearance, and we can help offset a lot of risk and burden and cost if you need connectivity for your medical device.
Yeah. Well, great. Chris, this has really been a really helpful learning about a little bit more about Galen and about yourself and how you've approached this challenge that's out there in the market. So thank you again, and appreciate your time.
Thank you. And for everybody in the audience, Joe has been a mentor to Galen early on, and he's given us some great advice, advice that I use to this very day. So thank you, Joe, for the opportunity, and thank you for all the advice in the past.
Yeah, well, you're quite welcome, and appreciate that. So, all right. Well, thank you, Chris. Next up is, and Chris has already done a little bit of preview of Greenlight Guru. Greenlight's been in business a little bit longer, has a little bit more breadth and depth to their product releases, but Greenlight is also a sponsor of the Texas Medical Device Alliance, and they were here in Austin for our exhibitor showcase. So with that, I want to introduce Josh Johnson. And Josh, thanks for being here, and tell us a little bit about Greenlight and yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me here, Joe, and Chris. Thanks for hyping Greenlight up already. Appreciate that. Helps that I don't have to walk in completely from a cold stage. But yeah, Joe, really appreciate all that you're doing with TMDA here, and it was great to be back at an in-person event in February, first one in a couple of years. So I know a lot of people that I spoke with at the event were definitely ready to be back in person. As Chris mentioned, webinars are an important strategy, and I'll talk a little bit about that from the Greenlight perspective during COVID. But I think people do crave those opportunities to connect and be in the room and have conversations. It's a little bit different. I think we're finding what that hybrid approach looks like. But really looking forward to the conversation. As Joe mentioned, my name's Josh Johnson. So I'm an account executive over here, really in a sales facing role. So I'm smushed between a CEO and a CTO. So really my role is very hyper focused on meeting with new companies, understanding their needs, where they're looking to go, and helping to walk them through an evaluation process of the Greenlight solution. So excited to talk a little bit about kind of what we've seen from the COVID times, what I've seen in terms of my role and how I'm helping companies. A little bit about Greenlight here, and I didn't have any fancy visuals prepared, but I do have a quick screen share that can at least give you a bit of a sense outside of what Chris has already mentioned. So we are a cloud-based EQMS tool. So we are helping medical device companies to stand up a quality management system and also capture their product development efforts. And we are solely focused on medical device. So when we think about kind of how Greenlight was positioned heading into COVID, we were in a unique position because we really said no to a lot of different industries. And that paid dividends coming upon COVID when there were a lot of different companies. When we think about the EUA process and companies trying to move really quickly to market, Greenlight was able to help these companies to very quickly stand up a quality management system. And the value prop around that is you don't have to customize the solution to align to FDA, ISO 13485, which Chris mentioned, and EU MDR standards. And so we see a lot of companies that are early on in the process coming to Greenlight, and we're helping them provide not only a quality management system foundation, but also workflows to manage that. And really where that comes into COVID is people all of a sudden couldn't go into the office. And so housing documents, having version controls, getting approvals, all of a sudden became a much more difficult task. And so we couldn't just go over to John's desk or Sue's desk and say, hey, can you sign off on this document? Can you approve this? Or pulling things together for a design review were much more difficult. And that's really where teams started to shift in terms of being able to say, we need different solutions for how we're managing this, for being able to continue to collaborate here during these times when we're not all in a single office together. But that's kind of a brief intro, high level. And Joe, I don't know if you want to kind of do more fireside chat style and prompt me with some questions. I kind of have a loose agenda here, but happy to dive into anything further there, and then can kind of go into some of the questions you had outlined.
Yeah, Chris. So if you can recount the sales and marketing strategy in early 2020, how has that changed during the COVID lockdown for you and as for your customers or your potential customers that you were courting at that point?
Yeah, and so I actually joined Greenlight in 2021, so kind of in the middle of all of this. So I have a lot of anecdotal stories and pieces I can share from just being around and knowing kind of how we've transitioned. But I think the biggest thing, so when we take a step back, looking at Greenlight, the company structure, what we did was we went 100% remote. And when we kind of do the crystal ball, and I'll jump ahead to that question a little bit more, and looking forward, that has been something, pivoting to that has allowed Greenlight to continue to, as we started to see some more traction, as we started to see people connecting with us, people utilizing the platform, that 100% remote allowed Greenlight to have a broader access to more talent. So from a scalability perspective, with where we were positioned, I think that was a big pivot in terms of, and I know a lot of companies that we meet with kind of struggle with that idea, and it's easier for some businesses to do than others, but that was a big strategic pivot that we did as a business, and that we're going to continue to do, is go 100% remote. We have an office, people are welcome to go in. It's a great space, but we've pivoted, and that's allowed us to bring in folks to the Greenlight team all over the US and then really all over the world. And so when we think about building out our support, connecting people closer to our customers, that was one of the biggest pivots that we made. And then in terms of how we kind of transitioned, we had a lot of sales and marketing efforts going on. There were a lot of events in the strategy. And so we really doubled down then on webinars, bringing in, folks like Galen Data, other subject matter experts in different areas to really go deep. How do we continue to provide value? The need and the crave for this type of information didn't go away. So how can we meet people where they're at? We're here on Zoom. How can we have really, really great experiences that are really focused? We're all on a lot of Zoom meetings. So I think we found that really trying to be hyper-focused on specific targets. It's not going to be everyone that's going to join this webinar, but the people that do, how can we really drive a lot of value for those people? And that's just a great way to start to warm them up to Greenlight, to our partners. And then I kind of mentioned in the chat too, it's been a really helpful tool as we get into the sales process. Maybe, we have someone who talks about cloud or connected data. I'm not a subject matter expert in that, but I can point them to a webinar that we did with Galen, and so those resources can continue to be used over time as well. So that's definitely one area that we found as a helpful resource to double down on. And then another area is continuing to build out the partner network. And so partnering with more and more teams like Galen, we often get teams that say, hey, I know Greenlight helps with these aspects, but we need someone to help out with cloud support. We need someone to help out with regulatory. We need someone to help out with this specific role of quality. Maybe we have, kind of two doctors in a dream coming in. They have the very close experience from the operating room, but they don't have the experience to bring this product to market. So that's where our partner network can really come in and help them. Maybe they want to work with someone one-on-one, or they want to work with a larger agency. So we continue to expand that from about 50 partners to well over 200 partners. And that's definitely a really great resource, is being able to connect these people that are on this journey of trying to bring this device to market and maybe don't have all the tools and resources, to people who can help them.
And a similar question, how do you, what metrics are you using to determine the effectiveness of podcasts and webinars in the sales process?
Yeah, so on the back end, a lot of that, it's all tying up into the revenue that we're bringing in as a business and how we're forecasting the revenue based on the different channels. And so if we really break it down pretty granularly in terms of event type of revenue, podcast type of revenue, and that can come in terms of organic search to Greenlight Guru or paid search. And then we have partner related revenue. And so we're looking as a business, did we hit these revenue targets, these revenue projections? Where should we continue to add resources. What can we grow? There's some things, you know, SEO, you get to a point, the return on that, you have to pay a lot more to get those leads coming in, and certain channels start to become less scalable or less effective there. And so we're always looking, what are the channels that we can have the most return on that are continuing to outperform the expected metrics. And that's where we'll usually continue to say, hey, in this channel, we can continue to add resources and hopefully grow that as we're looking at our overall revenue projections.
And of the tools that you guys have used to create lead generation, what has been most effective for you? I see at least daily something on LinkedIn from Greenlight Guru, but I was just curious to see what avenues have been most effective for you.
Yeah, you're hitting me with a question that's we're pretty hyper focused in that regard. So that's not an area that I get into as much. And so, you know, Chris has that experience that he's having to wear many different hats. And so, you know, with our marketing team, we're kind of segmented. We have people that are really focused on, I think the big piece for us is continuing to generate content. And so I will just kind of speak about the content piece more tactically behind that. Happy to dive in or get answers and follow up from our marketing team. But I think the content piece is really the big area that we continue to focus on. So Greenlight has a lot of medical device gurus and professionals. They've spent time in industry. So they're writing content, and this is content then that we can start to promote. We can use that in different webinar pieces. We can use that for launch pads for other things. So I think the content strategy has always been one of the primary or core focuses. The way that then we distribute that out or use that in the marketing strategy and the go-to-market in terms of tactically, I wouldn't know all of those specifics.
And
hopefully that helped though. But
yeah, and content, you're saying marketing content, not necessarily product content.
Yeah, some of it's product content, but generally speaking, we try to deliver value on various topics. You know, I think a big topic that a lot of companies are still trying to sort through is EU MDR. So constantly providing resources around that, bringing in subject matter experts within the industry, they can break that down for companies. And, you know, oh, by the way, if you're looking for something to help you in terms of traceability, Greenlight certainly has a solution for that, but it's more so helping to educate our buyers. And that's one of the things that we do then through the sales process. And I think the biggest thing that I've seen in terms of a shift in terms of sales approaches is you really need to be hyper focused and help to connect the dots for your buyers. And so a lot of our sales are more educational. We have these people that are newer to all things regulations. We definitely have some buyers that come in that are very experienced with 20 or 30 years of quality and regulatory experience, but we have a lot that aren't. And so it's really, how do we educate them? How do we give them the right level of context and detail on what they need? And then show them where we can kind of fit into that puzzle.
Great. And again, just encourage the audience, if there's any questions, just chat them in so we can get your questions or comments addressed. So thank you. Now, let's talk about the crystal ball a little bit. I know with, I hate to call it the post-COVID period, but we'll call it the post-shutdown period. I see I've been in the meetings where Greenlight has been now exhibiting at some of these meetings. What are the other changes that have started to reemerge for Greenlight from a sales and marketing standpoint?
Yeah, I think the big thing that we're kind of focusing on pivoting, and you might have seen some of this, is continuing to expand where we meet companies. So we're kind of pivoting more from just this EQMS tool to a medtech lifecycle excellence platform. And so I've kind of alluded to it a few different times, but we see so many companies that are new to this. And there's some stats out there. I think it's 75% of companies that are new to med device don't successfully ever get market clearance. That means there's a lot of innovative products out there. There's a lot of things that could drive things forward for the positive that never actually get a commercial opportunity. And so we're trying to help build a broader platform that teams can come and get plugged into, have a better understanding of the regulatory pathway, the regulatory landscape, so that they can start to build a strategy and not go all in on one thing without having the full context. Because we see so many teams run out of cash flow because they didn't realize the burden. Maybe they were going to have biocompatibility testing, or they didn't realize the clinical trials that they were going to need to accomplish. And so that's where the recent acquisition of Smart Trial is helping us to kind of build out this vision and helping teams to say, okay, now we have EQMS, we need clinical trial data, we need a better way to capture that, and helping them to more efficiently scale using software to augment some of their teams so they don't always have to hire a full-time person to do some of these aspects. And so from a Greenlight perspective, from the strategy there, we're continuing to invest in technology. We're going to continue to invest in how we're meeting those needs for our customers. And so I think one of the things that we're doing too is kind of taking a bold stance. There's a lot of companies, especially in tech, that are starting to pull back. They're starting to get a little bit more cautious with their dollars. We're continuing to invest in how we're accelerating the business, knowing that there's a lot of companies that will be able to continue to utilize these things on their product lifecycle journey.
Yeah, you just brought up the acquisition of Smart Trials, which I believe was announced 6 or 8 weeks ago. Tell us a little bit about integrating a new company now in this era of time that we have with the post-COVID situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of, a blessing in disguise that we're all remote and virtual. Now we can hop on with our colleagues in Denmark, and it's a little bit easier because we're all used to Zoom meetings. We have a weekly meeting called the Brickyard. Used to be on Friday afternoons. Now it is on Thursday at 11 o'clock. So our European colleagues can hop on. But I think the big thing is from a culture perspective, we're trying to align with companies that have a similar culture and vision to improve the quality of life. And then from a technology perspective, how do we bring these technologies together? If they have some HIPAA compliant data that they are bringing into their software within EQMS, there's some aspects there. How can we have an interface? And so we're working on, in terms of the technology, figuring out what that looks like, but in relationship to the team, I think the Zoom world definitely helps a lot. And then we are doing some things more intentionally, like once or twice a year, bringing the team together. So next week we'll be meeting as a full team in person. So we're trying to be as efficient as possible in the Zoom world, have a limited amount of meetings and have those meetings be focused, but then also have times and touch points where we still connect, we still get together as a team, whether that be at conferences or in company offsites.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned there were the company Smart Trials was from Denmark. Anything unique about them integrating a culture in a European company into a US company?
I think it's just adding to the great uniqueness that we already have as a company. So it's been really enjoyable. I've gotten to work with some of my colleagues on a first joint win of both Greenlight and Smart Trial together. So it's been a really great way to continue to collaborate and work together as a team. And their mission was so closely aligned. And it actually did start out as a partner relationship. So when Chris talks about this partner network, the ecosystem, they were originally a partner of Greenlight. So we were referring people to them for clinical data management, and that eventually blossomed into what is now this acquisition. So yeah, I've been a part of a few acquisitions. This is one that's very seamless. We're still working on the tech side of things, but from a culture perspective, we were very closely aligned in terms of that aspect. And so it's definitely, from a strategic position, it's definitely helping us in terms of the technology, but I don't think it's possible if the teams aren't able to come together in the way that we have been so far.
Yeah. And from a customer standpoint, how are you going to approach keeping that funnel filled of potential customers?
Yeah, so it's a mixture for us of really continuing to, we have a few different ways and means these customers are coming in. So we really try to take a diversified approach around it. So inbound is our largest channel. It's our most predictable channel. That's the thing that we can kind of ratchet up. It's our most efficient channel. And then from there, we have partners. So continuing to invest in those relationships. Partners will refer business over to us. Events, that's going to be something that we've started to bring back into our strategy, is going to these events and meeting with companies, building relationships. We have a lot of customers at events, so they can start to connect us with other folks. So events are still an important strategy, but I think we've found to kind of the points around events aren't maybe the most efficient way. Events are still a part of the strategy, but there are other ways to more efficiently grow the revenue. So I think we're going to continue to invest in events, but also thinking through how can we continue to do things like this to add value all throughout the year when we're not in a physical location as well. And then we do all outbound channels of outreach as well. So having a team of folks on our team reach out to businesses and bring in revenue and set up meetings that way as well.
Yeah, I'm hearing now some very common themes between Chris and Galen and Greenlight on how they're approaching the potential customers and creating inbound customers is maybe less reliance on the events per se, but fulfilling that through different mechanisms like podcasts and webinars and white papers and things like that. So it's an interesting commonality, I think, between the two approaches that both Galen and Greenlight are taking.
Yeah, and like I said, I think events definitely have an important place, and it's just how can we deliver value in different ways. And I think that's probably been the biggest light bulb for a lot of people is we don't have them, so we've just had to be creative and innovative around delivering that value. So I think as events come back in, there's going to be ways that we can continue to drive value, and I think it's going to be a more is more mentality around those things. Those are both going to offer up a lot of great opportunities for businesses if they continue to have a diversified approach, not put their eggs in just one of those baskets.
Yep. Well, anyone else with any questions, please go ahead and ask as we start wrapping up here with Josh. All right.
Well, thanks for having me on, Joe, and appreciate everyone's time here this afternoon.
Josh, thank you. Thank you so much for your participation today, but also the sponsorship that Greenlight provides Texas Medical Device Alliance. It's been, as you know, we're a whole sponsor financed organization. So all of our sponsors are crucial for us to continue our mission of bringing you these types of events. So thank you, Josh, Greenlight, and we'll move on now to Chris Idelson of ClearCam.
Hey.
Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I am well, thank you. So, Chris, I know a little bit about you. There is an Austin-based company, but why don't you tell us a little bit about ClearCam and yourself before we go into some of the more questions?
Sure thing. So my background is in engineering, undergraduate in biomedical, and finished up my PhD at UT in mechanical engineering a couple years back. And ClearCam actually spun out of the research that I was doing there. In Dr. Chris Reilander's medical device lab. We paired up with a surgeon who's our current CEO from Del Med, roped in Doug Stokely, our current COO and president, to kind of push us from the business side. And here we are, I guess 5-ish years later, still kicking. And what we do is we make a windshield wiper for a laparoscope. Nothing more complicated than that, I would say, from the verbal side of things. It cleans the windshield of a laparoscope inside the body, so surgeons can see more clearly.
And what problem is that solving?
So during surgery, they'll be driving their scope, and the way we often kind of sell this short analogy is it's like driving a car without windshield wipers. They have when their scope gets dirty while it's inside the body, they have to take it out of the body, similar to getting out of your car, and then they squeegee it off with either a sponge fluid combination, or some people call it the jacuzzi or the igloo or something like that. It's basically a little liquid bath, and they'll wipe it off. There's a handful of reasons why that's less than ideal for them to have to remove it from the body. And then we also see that they'll actually be so annoyed with this task, even though it's very simple and in all of its glory, I guess. But what we find is that surgeons will actually work through a compromised vision for almost half the surgery on average. There's some studies out there that show some really nice data on it. So cleaning it quickly and effectively right then and there is actually a really big win for the surgeons to streamline their workflow, not have to deal with all those frustrating issues that come up. And then my favorite line that I like to use came from a surgeon. It's like they're diffusing a bomb inside the body, and then their glasses fog up. And when we hear language like that, it kind of really speaks to the criticality of the problem.
Well, I know a little bit about the ClearCam story, but I know that ClearCam received 510K clearance weeks before the shutdown. So with that timing, I'm certain all of the sales and marketing plans kind of got set aside, and you had to come up with some new strategies and plans. So kind of take us through that transition time and how the company responded to that, to the shutdown challenge.
Happy to. Yeah, getting clearance might have been, nothing short of a miracle in terms of lucky timing. I'll say I'm glad we pushed really hard at the end of 2019 to really get that thing in. So right after the world shut down, we figured out that better phrase, we focused on our manufacturing efforts. So we actually kind of, I'll say, accidentally bought ourselves a little bit of a grace period where we could really hammer down manufacturing practices, refine the process, and get our first human use lots right out into sterilization and packaging, all that, and then back to us for final testing before we drop this into some humans. We had our first human use case in August 2020. So between then and February, there's a lot of time and effort validating the clean room we rented at the ACC Bioscience Incubator. So that's actually where we built our first couple lots of human use with our ragtag team of a handful of people at that point. And then our first human use in August was, I believe, at First Street Hospital, if I recall. It was a location in Houston for sure. Beyond that, we also, I didn't think about this when I was syncing with you briefly the other day. We also closed our seed series 2 round in August of 2020, which felt like another level of miraculous pushing from Doug and John and their efforts there. It was really great timing, and that bought us a bunch of runway for us to push through up until, I guess, where we're at now. As far as the market itself, it was certainly slower. It's basically the equivalent of because they shut down all elective surgeries up front, it kind of went from a running faucet down to a trickle. I would say we were very fortunate to have a strong network in Central Texas between Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston. Our CEO being a surgeon, knowing at least a lot of the players in the area, it wasn't impossible for us to get some initial evaluations. And as we're launching, first generation device, of course, the first stage is really less of a commercial pilot, more of a clinical pilot. Figure out all the gaps that exist in that first generation device and find out what kind of band-aids we can slap on it. And the first 100 cases we finished probably over the course of 6 or so months. I should have that in front of me, but I don't. And over that time, we did find a handful of techniques that we could use differently regarding the training of the device. We also found out that the training that we had done initially compared to what we were able to execute in the field was very different. We had gone around, done a bunch of cadaver labs, went med to market. We did some down out in San Antonio as well. And we just said, here, play with the device. Here's how you use it. Get as many reps as you can in a couple of minutes, and let us know what you think. And then, of course, when you're out in the field, you don't have a cadaver or a couple of minutes to even train. So I have to do this. I wound up bringing the lab to them. We had this super big Pelican case where we basically transported a laparoscopic tower out there, and we would do what we kind of call like a hallway training, a hallway lab. And so we'd take everything out, stack it on top, and it'd be a little bit wobbly, but we got to do what we got to do, and put a little ketchup on the lens and train them on how to clean the ketchup off. And so these We got some funny looks. I can admit that. But as far as trainability, it certainly helped us push things a little bit farther, a little bit more effectively.
Interesting. And I'm just thinking in terms of you were also building a sales force during this time period, or I assume that was happening. I don't know that, but maybe you can clarify that. But how about the recruitment of sales contacts and the training of the sales force? How did that go on during this period?
So we actually, so it's a very good, let alone fair question. We actually try to keep ourselves very lean and focus on those pilots for evaluating the device for clinical de-risking, we'll say. We're now starting to really push, we have been for a couple months, our commercial pilot. So, but we also aren't looking to scale this thing out this year, at least for tens of thousands of units. We're staying pretty focused. We want to show, say, commercial stickiness at a handful of sites, go deep into those sites. So we looked at different models. So as opposed to hiring, 4 full-time salespeople to go into 4 different sites, we looked at contracting to local people already established in the network, while having one lead internal to ClearCam, really driving that team, getting the evals up and running, having these contractors be able to kind of take it from them once we were set and drive in their home, so to speak.
Okay, so and I saw recently that you successfully hit a milestone recently. Tell us about that milestone.
Yeah, we had our 500th case. It was in our first transplant case as well. Certainly a nice milestone to have hit. We've been targeting 1,000 cases for a little bit, hoping to figure out ways to ramp that up. And it really feels like in the past couple of months, we kind of found our stride, got into a couple of the key facilities in Austin, growing in a couple of, we'll say, Midwest as well as East Coast locations is going to be really fun and exciting. We were just out in Virginia this past week, and I didn't do any of the hard work out there. That's our director of sales. But this ability to kind of show geographic diversity and really drive, say, sustained sales and growth from an organic pathway has really been the main goal. Not exactly sure if I'm answering your question though. Am I hitting that, or something else you wanted me to chat about?
And how have you made these contacts? You mentioned Dr. Euchre and his network. Is this mostly through his network, doctor to doctor sales, or how are you getting known in the market?
Gotcha.
Having this device,
Yeah, our first 50 cases or so were certainly, and these were, I'll say, more on the clinical pilot side. People who can give us some great input on how to fix it. Those certainly came from some warm connections. We did have a couple who came in, saw the website, heard about us through an email or a posting or something like that, and they kind of jumped in for some evaluations earlier on. These locations I just mentioned, actually in the Midwest and on the East Coast, I'm so thrilled. One of them we didn't even know about. We never met him at any of the recent conferences, but the other one and a couple of the ones in the pipeline now did come from recent conferences opening up. That's been a big win. The virtual conferences for vendors, it's just not something that works for the technology you've got to hold in your hands. It's much more difficult to kind of deliver that sense of, oh, here's something that can actually improve my day, as opposed to whatever they can find on our website. You can only do so much. So it's in the early stage, I guess. It was certainly warmer introductions through our surgeon CEO who has his network. But beyond that, we started to grow a little bit more organically, and the trade shows really being in person opened things up for us again.
And what type of trade shows do you participate in?
So we went out to SAGES, Society, or I'm blanking, Society of American Gastrointestinal and Endoscopic Surgery. We've been to ACOG and ACS, basically any surgical show where laparoscopic surgeons are going to be present. general, GYN, big areas. Thoracic has been something that we've really found our stride in recently, that we've been kind of doubling down on and pushing extremely hard. And then I think GYN will be another area where we put a little bit more energy and effort recently, or in the future, I mean. And we really started in general primarily. The need was very clear. There's also, during COVID, when the elective procedures shut down, bariatric cases were actually still pretty consistent because a lot of those patients are considered high risk. So they were able to continue bariatric procedures.
Let's see. Yeah. Interesting, interesting timing. And going forward, what's the plan from a sales and marketing standpoint to get to your 1,000 or to get the 10,000 units sold?
It looks like we're going to hit 1,000. I hesitate to say anything out loud because I'm jinxing it, of course, but I think within the next 2 or 3 months, we'll hit that target based on a couple of recent things that have put a smile on people's faces. Really catching wind at a couple locations and having another couple come on site pretty quick. It's been good and exciting. 10,000, I know better than to have a best guess on that one. But beyond that, the strategies, I mean, we spent a good amount of time when we had, a little bit less volume that we were able to capture because of COVID and all the surgeries, the volume trickling down. We had a little bit more time to double down on some marketing opportunities virtually. I think we heard most of the same things. We adapted most of the same things that everyone else has mentioned. Try to release some blogs about key milestones, adding new team members. We also went and started pursuing some new projects. So we kind of had this one idea fall into our laps. A couple of these surgical societies say, here are the new guidelines we're posting for laparoscopic surgeries during COVID. We talked a lot about this gas leak. You want to be able to control the gas because there might be active COVID particles in the surgical space and they can escape and you can come into contact and contract that way. We don't know it, but that's what we theorize. And so we started to look into how we might have a little bit of an impact there. And we came out with this nice little research paper talking about how instrument removal and insertion actually creates these big plumes of smoke. And then we saw, not a couple weeks and months later, there's actually a lot of research being done into this area. And so we found there is this really interesting, I don't know the proper phrasing, I'd probably call it something along the lines of a marketing claim, where we can actually mitigate potential exposure events because we reduce the instrument removal inside and out of the trocar. So there was this really interesting overlap that kind of naturally fell out while we were pursuing this other, we'll say, potential problem, maybe develop a solution around it, and then we figure out we already have a little bit of something tied into our current product. That was particularly interesting. It's one of the things that stands out in my mind is, this nice little value add that we discovered along the way because we weren't scared of, going and taking a look at new things while we had the ability to do so. Trying to
Did
think
that
about
require a product modification, or was that just serendipitous with just not needing to take the device in and out as much?
It was serendipitous. So it's something that's been known that you can get people in the OR can be exposed to HPV or carcinogens through the gas because you look at this study, then this study, then this study, and the link becomes very clear. But it was never very popular. And then all of a sudden, after COVID came around and they had these new guidelines for laparoscopic surgery, it started to kind of creep into a couple people's mind, most notably the OR managers. I don't know how many surgeons were worried about it on a day-to-day basis, and I won't pretend to speak for them. But once you start talking to the value analysis committee members or the influencers within that area, we started hearing less of a, this isn't that big of a deal compared to staffing extra nurses because we're short, or getting all the PPP that we need in stock to keep the place up and running. But once we found this possible COVID link, it became, I wouldn't say it opened 1,000 doors and all of a sudden the floodgates were wide open, but it definitely started appearing as if we were getting less resistance for not being what I would call COVID linked.
Yep. The aerosolization of the the virus was a transmission factor. I know in a number of surgical areas, ENT especially, when they were doing procedures, and a lot of the early victims were ENT surgeons in China. So that was a distinct concern around the virus transmission, especially in the healthcare worker setting.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? Please chat them in. We're just kind of winding up here. As far as the future, the plans for ClearCam, obviously you have a product that's in the market and starting to gain traction. What are there product additions that are being looked at? What's kind of in the future for ClearCam's development process?
Yeah, I mean, we've plenty of maybe not COVID related developments. You know, improving usability of the first generation device has been key. Dropping COGS, you know, a significant chunk will help out everyone, put some smiles on faces. Also looking to continue development of a nice little robotic application for a similar problem. Robots are nothing short of talk along the surgical halls nowadays, so that's something that we keyed in on. We did consider, and we'll probably reconsider in the next couple months, whether there's another option for this COVID project that we started. I talked about before regarding the leaks from trocars. Little product development prototyping happened during the COVID days that's maybe worth looking into again. The iron isn't quite as hot as it was, but the opportunity might still be there, depending on how we kind of develop the solution further. And then marketing and sales wise, outside of another shutdown, I think we found our stride. We'll probably look to expand on the in-person opportunities again. It really does make all the difference in the world, you know, for medical device hardware focused. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot other than driving sales. We'll look to hire another salesperson or two, grow the engineering team, push development. Nothing too crazy. Close our Series A. That'll be a nice little milestone as well.
Getting money in the door is always a great achievement. And as far as the customer goes, the client, who makes that buying decision? Is it the doc that's making that buying decision? Is it a hospital administrator? And how does that interplay work now for you?
Yeah, so surgical champions have been our key focus for really getting these things into the OR for evaluation. They tend to be able to do that even during the COVID days when policies were extremely strict. And we did hear a couple places say, you know, we're just not looking to take any new vendors right now. COVID policies kind of prevent it. And it was an easy way for hospitals to say no, which most hospitals love saying no. But we've been really pushing on, I apologize, I'm kind of losing my train of thought. Oh, I definitely lost my train of thought. Can you repeat the question?
It was around the administration, hospital administration,
Oh, right.
in the buying decision process.
Yeah, so the surgical champions, as we look to really add a bunch of these, call them, how do I describe this? When we focused on that new marketing claim that we found out, you know, we might have a potential reduction of exposure to aerosolized contaminants. Like some people theorize COVID is, that really started to reduce the resistance. So we really looked to add and verify, you know, some marketing claims around surgical safety. The surgical champion then gets this nice little packet, brings it in and drives it home to the value analysis committee. Had a really good rates of success going that pathway with the packet that we really have. It really depends on just how valuable that surgical champion is, the weight they carry with them, and how eager they are to get our device in. You know, someone lukewarm, not really that engaged, we're just not going to see as many, you know, walls be broken by them. Fortunately, this problem happens on a daily basis in almost every single surgery. So there's no laparoscopic surgeon out there who says this isn't, you know, this doesn't bother me. and I take that back. Of course, there's always going to be someone who really doesn't care for the problem that we solve. But we've had really good response rates so far, I think is the way I'd phrase it, where even contacting us out of the blue and wanting to get us in an eval, that's how Virginia and Michigan in the Midwest really kind of opened some doors very fast, even faster than what we've seen in the past 9-10 months or so. So that's been really exciting to see that drive.
I assume there's no reimbursement for this device.
Correct. Yeah, we're staying below the cost of anything that really needs that, and we didn't want to wait for a reimbursement code to really launch this thing. Time to market being the most important for us.
Yeah.
So we're basically medical supply.
So the hospital takes it on their margins in order to afford your improvement.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, that's always a challenge to get the hospital to see the value in that. What it saves the frustration for a surgeon versus the dollars in the profit in the institution. So that would be I'm sure a difficult challenge for from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, that's another, I keep pointing to surgical safety in the most recent days as something that we're really pushing and doubling down on. And surgeon frustration for something that, costs an arm and a leg. I don't think we're going to see many value analysis committees really jump on that. But fortunately, because we're so low cost, right around a supply item, it hasn't been the most difficult pathway. Yeah. Having said that, knocking the current competitor off the shelf, that always is going to cost a little bit less to start things out. We'll hear some back and forth and usually find a way to move forward, but occasionally you just meet the people who aren't going to be the right fit, not an initial customer at least.
So Andy Stewart asked a question. This lens cleaning technology has been common in ENT. What IP hurdles did you face in getting the IP clearance that you have?
So we've had a really good success rate of getting accepted patents. The only ones that haven't actually been issued are ones that we chose to abandon. As I mentioned at the very beginning, we came out of UT. The initial IP was related to that. We had a couple patents that we were licensing, and we developed some robotic stuff along the way that's captured in a licensing agreement with them. We haven't really had any hurdles though. No one's contacted us with any issues. We haven't had to contact anyone else with any issues. It's been pretty seamless so far. And we try to stay very aggressive on the IP side as one of the key value cores for the company. Mm-hmm. I don't see that changing too much in the next couple of years. I think we're still going to stay pretty aggressive, especially as we look to add on some new bells and whistles for future generations and roll out some new product lines. So I'm fortunate to say no issues yet.
Okay. Great. Any last questions as we wrap up? If you can get those in, but appreciate the time, Chris, to hear about ClearCam and how ClearCam is addressing those situations in the marketplace. So
we appreciate you having us very much so.
Yeah, and it's as I said, they're an Austin-based company. Appreciate being in our backyard as well as from Texas MDA standpoint as well. So try to help each other out as much as we can as well in our community. So thank you, Chris. And as we kind of wrap up here, I want to thank first Andrew Crawford for giving us a few-minute introduction to the OEM opportunity in Costa Rica. And please reach out to Andrew for any questions or opportunities that you need to develop. Chris Idelson, I think that there might be some future opportunities for you as you're looking at lowering costs for devices. So that may
had entered my mind.
Well, we'll be the matchmaker here. So then Chris DuPont from Galen Data, appreciate always your insights and your help today in this presentation. Josh, Greenlight Guru is a company that is a sponsor for TMDA. We're also, my company, Advantage Diagnostics, is a customer of Greenlight. So we really appreciate the partnership we have, but also Josh, you being here and presenting kind of your thoughts on the sales and marketing challenges that we now face in this COVID era. And Chris, once again, thanks for your time with ClearCam. So with that, I'll kind of wrap up the session today. Thank you all for your attendance. We present our sponsors once again and thank them for their support during these times as a way to really help keep our mission going forward at Texas Medical Device Alliance. Appreciate any feedback that you have for us, and look forward to our next meeting in October, where we will continue our discussions on topics of interest through the medical device community here in Central Texas area. So thank you all.